So one of the most important things to a garden or a farm is irrigation. And so I wanted to talk a little bit today about how I have the irrigation system set up here at the Royer Manor. And we'll start by looking at a diagram that I have showing, and then we'll go out and we'll actually walk around and look at each one of these things. But we'll start with the diagram, and I'll zoom in over here on the left, and you'll see that we have a well pump. Pump isn't spelled right. I'll have to go fix that. But our well pump, it pumps at about 180 to 200 feet, I believe, maybe even a little shallower, maybe as shallow as 140 feet. In the eastern side of Merced County where we live, we're in the foothills. We have really, really good groundwater. We've had it tested, so the quality of our water is fantastic, and we have a pretty good recharge supply. So we have a pretty reliable pump. I think it was new about 5 years ago. So we have a pretty reliable source for our water at this point. So our pump pumps into a pressure tank, but between the pump and that pressure tank is a pressure switch. And what that pressure switch does is measures the pressure in the tank and determines when to turn the well on and off. So when the pressure reaches a certain point in the tank, the pressure switch will send a signal to the pump, hey, it's time to turn off, so the pump will turn off. Then the pressure will drop as we start using water in different places like the house or in the garden or for our landscaping. And as the pressure drops, it'll drop below a certain point, and that pressure switch will send a signal to the pump saying, hey, you need to turn on, we are low on pressure. So we have our water in our pressure tank, and that gives us on-demand water. And this is something on the agriculture or the farming side that's really important to understand, because not everybody has the capacity to have on-demand water. A lot of times you have to order your water from a canal company or some sort of water company, even if it's from a well, 24 hours or more in advance. So for some people, the idea of doing real-time irrigation or having sensors that say this is exactly when to turn things on and off, there's actually a pretty big limit on the capacity to do that. But here we have a pressure tank, which allows us to have on-demand water. So after a pressure tank, you can see that we have water that goes to our home and to our landscaping. And then we go into these little blue diamonds or whatever you want to call them. And each one of those represents a 3/4 inch ball valve. So the water goes in, and we have this interesting setup where we have a fertilizer venturi where I can go ahead and use the venturi to pull water in and irrigate or fertigate and provide fertilizer to the rest of the system. So that's what this little setup here, that's why these 4 valves initially are there, is so that way I can run water straight through, or I can turn valves on and off so that we can run water through the venturi and then on out to the rest of the system. So everything is a 3/4 inch main line and then 3/4 inch ball valves. You'll see after our first little venturi set, we go into our first kind of irrigation area where we have some citrus trees. You'll see there's arrows on some of the lines and not on others. When there's an arrow, that means it's what I call a main line, and that's the 3/4 inch underground PVC. When there is a line without an arrow, that means it's above ground and it's some sort of tubing that feeds to a micro sprinkler. All the little blue dots represent a micro sprinkler. So as we follow the system over, you'll see we have our plum, our pluot tree, our apricot, almond, cherry, peach trees and nectarines, so our stone fruits. This is our little orchard. You can see I have my legend here too. And then from the orchard we kind of can scroll on over to where all of our row crops are and our expansion. We have a navel orange tree, a mandarin, a lemon tree, a couple places for row crops that we have our first row planted, and then we have our table grapes. And then all this fun stuff in purple represents or pink, depending on how you're looking at it. All this represents future expansion. So stuff that I'll be doing, hopefully this year, we'll be expanding. I already have the key lime tree, I have the lime tree, I have the 2 mandarin trees. So those projects will be happening really quickly. I also have it set up to do the row crops up here in the top right of the diagram. But right now I'm just using tubing out there to the drip tapes. So yeah, then the row crop areas, those have 2 two surface drip tape lines running out of them. So next steps is we'll go out and we'll actually take a look at this, and we'll walk through this from the beginning, from the well to the pressure switch to the tank, and we'll go out to the valves and we'll look at each of these in the field or in the garden. But another thing that's important to note is that pressure tank gives me the ability to have real-time irrigation, and not everybody has that. One of the other things I'm hoping to do this summer is expand and maybe get some automation installed in some areas on this, so that way I could program when I want it to come on or when I want it to come off. And eventually I'd like to have sensors that are telling us, when we should turn the apricot tree on and when we should turn it off, and having an individual algorithm for each one of those crops or each one of those valves, so we could really dial in our irrigation. So we'll see you outside in a few minutes.